I'm David Knowles, and this is Ukraine, the latest. Today, we bring you the news from Ukraine, analyse Vladimir Putin's diplomacy in Vietnam and North Korea, and we speak to Ukrainian teenagers in Warsaw on studying abroad and adapting into Polish society more than 2 years since the start of the full-scale war.
Bravery takes you through the most unimaginable hardships to finally reward you with victory.
If we give President Zelensky the tools, the Ukrainians will finish the job. Slava Ukraini!
Nobody's going to break us. We're strong. We're Ukrainians.
It's Thursday, the 20th of June. 2 years and 119 days since the full-scale invasion began. And today I'm joined by our Associate Editor Dominic Nicholls, Senior Foreign Correspondent Roland Oliphant, freelance journalist Gabriella Jozwiak, and at the end of the podcast, we have some special guests joining us from the Warsaw Ukrainian School. I started by asking Dom for the latest news from Ukraine.
Sure, hi David, and hello wherever you are. An overnight barrage of missiles and drones caused significant damage, we are told, to a Ukrainian thermal power plant and just generally maintain pressure on the electricity grid. This comes out of Ukrainian officials this morning. The attack on energy infrastructure across 4 regions in the country is mostly in the east, and in particular the Dnipropetrovsk region. It was said to have damaged equipment, wounded 7 workers and cut off electricity to nearly 220,000 consumers, the Energy Ministry said. These recent attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, you'll remember, they've said to have knocked out half of Ukraine's energy generating capacity since March and forced rolling blackouts. We get regular updates from officials in Kyiv saying that kind of thing. Now, the Ukrainian Air Force said it shot down 5 out of 9 missiles and all 27 drones launched by Russia across 10 Ukrainian regions during this attack, which mostly took place in the early hours of this morning. Private power company DTEC said one of its thermal power plants had suffered significant damage. The strikes, it said, amounted to the 7th largest scale attack on its infrastructure since March the 22nd, when the latest sort of wave of energy attacks on energy started, really. National grid operator Ukrainian said the attack would lead to an increase in the quantity of scheduled blackouts, and Sergei Popko, who's the head of Kyiv's military administration, said the air defences had shot down all incoming aerial targets on their approach to the capital, with no damage or injuries reported in the city. Elsewhere, Russian troops are intensifying attacks in the border areas of Luhansk Oblast with the aim of capturing the village of Borova in neighbouring Kharkiv Oblast, we are said. This comes from Ukraine's 3rd Assault Brigade. This report came out last night. In a post on Telegram, the brigade said Moscow's forces were using tanks, first-person view drones and anti-aircraft missiles in an effort to advance, and also claimed that they deployed chemical weapons, although they didn't provide any further details about that allegation. Now, Borova had been occupied by Russian forces in March 2022. It was liberated later that year during that sweeping counteroffensive through Kharkiv Oblast. And according to the crowdsourced deep state monitoring service, Russia has amassed 10,000 troops of what's said to be part of a shock fist to capture the area, and Borova in particular. I note that today's UK Defence Intelligence tweet said that over the last week, Russia's long-range aviation fleet has shifted tactics away from targeting frontline positions, and the recent tactics have been long-range aviation fleet glide bombs into frontline positions and drones to conduct the deeper strikes into Kyiv and well beyond. But they are now said, British Defence Intelligence saying that the long-range aviation fleet are now concentrating their cruise missiles to target Ukrainian air bases. The British Defence Intelligence assessment is that this is born out of what they say is frustration of continued Ukrainian airstrike successes, whilst also likely highlighting Russia's concerns about the future employment of F-16 aircraft. End of quote. Now, if that's correct, if their assessment is correct, it shows me why the debate about sending arms to Ukraine is always much wider than just the pure military utility of the weapon system under discussion. Just talking about these things, as well as sending, obviously, but just talking about weapons changes the narrative. It gets inside the enemy's head. It makes him second guess, or at least have to devote scarce and valuable intellectual horsepower from the command staffs and the generals in charge and what have you, to thinking about how to counter the new threat. So the F-16s are not yet operational in Ukraine, as far as we know, but the mere mention of them being on the way has, in this assessment from British defence intelligence, changed Russian behaviour. So imagine what could have happened and how the Russian system might have been overloaded if it had been presented with multiple things to think about concurrently. Tanks, long-range missiles, air defence, fighter jets, permission to use them over the border, that kind of thing. So I think the trick now is to work out what arguments are left in the locker for the West to deploy and how to increase the tempo of their deployment so that the Russian system just doesn't have time to react to each new threat quickly enough and grinds to a halt. That's just my sort of segue on that. Sorry. Now then, there were, however, more drone strikes on infrastructure in Russia. Fires are said to have broken out at 2 fuel depots in Russia, having been hit by Ukrainian drone strikes conducted by the SBU security agency early today. The strikes in the regions of Tambov and Analysing are the latest in Ukraine's intensification of its attack on fuel depots in Russia, obviously seeking to dent the whole fuel industry, the oil industry. Now, Tambov is about 400 km northeast of Kharkiv, the same distance southeast of Moscow. Adygea is just inside Russia's Black Sea coast, about 100 km due east of Kerch. So, well behind the lines. Maxim Yegorov, governor of the Tambov region, said firefighters were still tackling a blaze at the fuel depot, but no one had been hurt. And then just sort of lastly on the sort of hard military stuff, we spoke yesterday about the US government stepping in to insist that the Patriot system that had been set to go to Switzerland should instead go to Ukraine. We offered an opinion that move may signal a change in the policy around the delivery of weapons supplies and end-user agreements and all that kind of stuff. Well, now, today, the FT is reporting, and it's just been updated by their guy in Kyiv, Christopher Miller, FT reporting that the US government is set to halt all open orders for Patriot interceptor missiles. So not the whole systems, but just the missiles. All open orders for the missiles are going to be halted until Ukraine has got enough to defend itself from Russia. Now, the FT say that 3 people with knowledge of this decision said that this is going to be announced later today by the White House, and comes after President Biden said last week in Italy at the G7 that he had secured commitments for the delivery of additional air defence systems to Ukraine. You may remember Biden said 5 countries had agreed to send Patriot and other air defence systems to Kyiv, and that other countries expecting the delivery of US systems would have to wait because, quote, everything we have is going to go to Ukraine until their needs are met. Now, you may remember Biden and Zelensky at the G7 last week, or in the sort of sidelines of, they signed a 10-year defence pact when they were in Puglia in Italy. Biden at the time said Kyiv would begin receiving more systems relatively quickly. That seems to be the case. And just a reminder, FT reminds us that Poland, Romania and Germany are among European nations currently with open orders for Patriot systems that have yet to be delivered. Spain has an open order for the launchers. Spain, Greece and Romania have Patriots in their arsenals, but have so far declined to authorise transfers of launch systems to Ukraine. Although I note that in the last hour, Romania is said to have promised to deliver 1 system to Ukraine. This sort of breaking news is coming out of the Supreme Council of the National Defence of Romania. So it looks like another one may be on the way. We think, aside from that one, we think Ukraine currently has about 4 Patriot systems provided by the US and Germany. Berlin has said it's going to send another 1. So that plus the Romania looks like about 6. And of course, the Netherlands announced a few weeks ago an initiative to send another system based on components supplied by multiple countries. So with that one, possibly 7, but only 4 that we can actually sort of point to, if you know what I mean, David.
Well, thank you very much for all of that, Dom. Let's go now to our senior foreign correspondent, Roland Oliphant. Roland, over the past few days, we've been covering Vladimir Putin's visit to, first of all, to North Korea and today to Vietnam. We wanted to bring you on just to get some of your reactions to what's happened so far and what you think this might mean strategically for the region, for Russia and for the war.
Yes, thank you for having me. As everyone probably knows, Vladimir Putin was in North Korea for the past couple of days for his first state visit in about 2 decades there. He's in Vietnam now, so 2 quite important visits on the, the Asia-Pacific kind of area. I think if we take North Korea first, it's quite easy to ridicule that, right? It's quite easy to kind of poke fun. I mean, Dmytro Kuleba, the Ukrainian foreign minister, did exactly that, kind of quipped. Lonely bromance, he called it. We can easily talk about how, Vladimir Putin was once a world leader and now he has to hang out with this slightly eccentric, overweight lunatic who runs a hermit kingdom. But that said, look, we know that North Korea is already supplying weapons to Russia for its war in Ukraine. And the question really on everyone's mind is, what actually does this visit represent? And actually, we don't really know. So they've come up with something called a comprehensive strategic partnership. Vladimir Putin said that includes a mutual defense clause. Mr. Kim said it was, quote, strictly peace-loving and defensive in nature. Defense can be twisted in all kinds of ways. So a lot of people are going to be pondering, trying to work out, what does that mean? Could it possibly, and I'm not saying this is the case, but could it be used as cover, as an excuse to expand North Korea's contribution to Russia's war effort in Ukraine? Could you even see perhaps North Korean troops being sent to, replace Russian casualties on the battlefield? Lots of possibilities there. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but the ambiguity certainly raises some questions. And it raises questions on the Korean Peninsula, right? Because, it is a very delicate balance of power there. The South Koreans have been careful to walk a line where the Ukraine war is concerned because Russia is a neighbor there, because, their relationship with Russia is important. They very clearly issued a very blunt warning to Mr. Putin saying, look, do not cross any lines here. Fine, do your trip, but be very, very careful about how close you get to these guys and don't do anything crazy. There's talk about space cooperation, Russia helping North Korea with its space program, Cold War, good old euphemism for intercontinental ballistic missiles. Again, we don't actually know what the details of this are, so it's one to watch, and it's certainly not something to be just kind of laughed at. I mean, by all means laugh, it's good for you psychologically, but take it seriously. And the other little interesting thing here that you should be looking at is this tiny little river, the tiny little border between Russia and North Korea. So it's just south, I've got to think about a compass point, southwest of Vladivostok. Quite a long way from Vladivostok. I was in Vladivostok once and I thought, I'm going to just take a trip down this afternoon to see the North Korean border. But these are Russian distances. It's a bit too far for that. But either way, there's a river. 15 miles of that is Russia and North Korea. There's a bridge over it. It's their only land border. But that river goes up into China. And the Chinese have long been asking for access to navigate that river to get into the Sea of Japan. When Putin and President Xi met in May, they did mention consultations about that question. Now, if that were to happen, we don't know that it has been greenlit. That would be basically a big victory for China, because it's a proposal the Russians have kind of resisted for a long time, basically because you would be, surrendering a little bit of control of one of your borders to the country that you swiped this part of Siberia off in the 1860s. If that happens, that informs us once again about the balance of power in that Chinese-Russian relationship. It would also, by the way, give the Chinese their first access to the Sea of Japan in, 160 years. I've been talking about North Korea a lot more than I thought. Let me get to Vietnam. It's a completely different case. North Korea, people will laugh at because it's seen as this strange little rogue state, this isolated hermit kingdom. Vladimir Putin is the third superpower leader to visit Vietnam since September. In September, Joe Biden was there. In December, Xi Jinping was there. Vladimir Putin is following in their footsteps. Vietnam is actually it's one of these well-placed rising powers which has been kind of very carefully neutral and is very, very carefully hedging its bets. Yes, it's very close historic relationships with Russia and the Soviet Union. Vladimir Putin is popular there. They still buy most of their weapons from Russia. Vietnamese President To Lam today, he said the two sides want to push cooperation on defense and security, how to deal with non-traditional security challenges on the basis of international law for peace, security in the region and the world. He's not endorsing the invasion of Ukraine, but unlike Kim Jong-un, he's walking a much, much more careful line. That's because for Vietnam, yes, Russia is is a very important partner. Russia supplies most of their weapons. They're extremely wary about their Chinese neighbor to the north. For that reason, they're now buying weapons from the Americans. The Americans are very keen to sell the Vietnamese weapons because they see Vietnam as a potential bulwark against the Chinese. And Hanoi is really quite cleverly, quite adeptly managing all of these geopolitical suitors, basically. So a completely different kettle of fish. In that part of the world, Vladimir Putin is one of several people vying for influence with what is a pretty successful economy in Southeast Asia, and with all the tensions growing in Indo-Pacific, potentially a very, very important part of that geopolitical jigsaw down there.
Well, thank you very much, Roland. I'll come back to you, I think, so I've got a couple of quick questions, I think, at the end. But as time marches on, let's go to our next segment. Today is World Refugee Day. And here at Ukraine the Latest, this is a chance for us to think a little bit about how Ukrainian children who've been forced to flee their country are faring across Europe, across the world. So we've teamed up with the children's charity Save the Children Poland to hear from some Ukrainian students and their teacher, now living in the Polish capital, Warsaw. The students attend a special Ukrainian school that was set up after the war began. We're also joined by Jozwiak, a friend of the podcast and a freelance journalist who specialises in writing about children and their lives. Gabby, you've been finding out about how Ukrainian children attending usual state Polish schools are getting on more broadly. So over to you, Gabby. This is your section. Thank you very much for joining us. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, thanks, David. It's great to be back. Yeah, so today I wanted to talk to you about not children living in Ukraine, but the children that have fled because of the war. And according to the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, the latest data from June, there are almost 1 million Ukrainian refugees recorded as living in Poland, which is just over 957,500. And of those, about 380,000 are children. And to put that into context, there are just under 6 million Ukrainian refugees spread across Europe at the moment, and about 600,000 have gone to countries outside of Europe. The only countries with more refugees than Poland are Germany and Russia. So today, it's great. We're going to hear some real live Ukrainian children attending the Warsaw Ukrainian School and their teacher, Alina. As you said, this is a special school as it teaches the Ukrainian curriculum in Ukrainian as well as the Polish curriculum. So the children there can study and complete both Ukrainian and Polish qualifications. This caters for about 270 students aged 6 to 17, and the school is familiarly known as szkoła, which is a contraction of the words for school in Ukraine in Polish. But actually, the vast majority of Ukrainian children in Poland are attending normal state Polish schools where they have to do classes in Polish and follow the Polish curriculum. So before we go to Alina and her students, I wanted to give the listeners a bit of an insight into the situation for those children. I think it's easy for people to imagine that if a child has left Ukraine, they are safe and therefore they are okay. And of course, they are safer. These children are being spared some of the daily traumas that children in Ukraine still have to experience, which we shouldn't forget. Daily air raid sirens in the night, disturbing their sleep, having to study in bomb shelters at school, actually hearing explosions, and living in a population of people that is at high stress level. So they've kind of managed to get away from some of those negative factors. But unfortunately, being a refugee does lead to other problems. And life isn't necessarily rosy for all the children that have left Ukraine. Just to put this in context in Poland, the children that are there, I said there's 380,000 of them. Actually, only half of them are enrolled in schools in Poland, and the rest of them are registered to be learning online in their Ukrainian schools, which has become quite a problem because although that at the beginning of the war, that was seen as a kind of fairer way to do things. After 2 years of children learning online, this is becoming a problem because obviously it's not really good for children to be sitting at home on their own learning online for that long. So the law is changing in Poland. And from September, it will be compulsory for all Ukrainian children to attend a Polish school. And the government's decided to make this a condition of a monthly child allowance that Ukrainian families are able to claim. So that's going to be a big change in September. So hopefully those number of children actually attending schools in person will go up. But to get some insight into what the picture has been like up to now, I spoke to Anna Kowalczuk and Hanna Achremovich, who both work at a charity called Fundacja Ukraina, which is Foundation Ukraine. And they receive funding from Save the Children Poland to help support Ukrainian children in school. Now, they work in Lower Silesia, which is a province in the south of Poland, bordering Germany and Czechia, and it includes the city of Wrocław, which is the fourth largest city in Poland. They cover 26 schools, and the way that they're helping children is by helping the schools to hire special assistants called intercultural assistants. Now, they're kind of like a teaching assistant in school, and they are attached to a pupil or to a group of students. They basically do a myriad of things to help these children. So the main thing is translating between the child and the Polish teacher. They help Polish teachers understand cultural differences between the child and the school's expectations. They help Polish teachers communicate with the Ukrainian children's parents, because sometimes the children might be learning Polish, but the Ukrainian parents, their Polish is not kind of up to the same speed. And they're also holding homework classes to help the children do their homework in Polish. Now, Hanna told me that these assistants are generally focused on primary schools and that there is quite a good enrolment rate of children at this age. But really worryingly, she said that older children in secondary schools are dropping out, that actually there's a really high dropout rate, as high as 50% of secondary school Ukrainian students are leaving school in Poland, basically because by the time they get to sit their final exams, they just don't feel ready and their Polish isn't up to scratch. They don't want to fail. So some of them are just dropping out and going back to those online Ukrainian schools and trying to sit the Ukrainian exams as well. But this, as I mentioned earlier, is not a great situation because it means that the children are not integrating in their new communities. They're not making friends with Polish children. They are potentially sitting at home on their own studying, which is not good for children's brain development or mental health. Now, schools in Poland are putting on additional language classes for Ukrainian children, Hanna told me, but she said that unfortunately they're not very engaging, and she described how the standard of language teaching is often a bit poor because the teachers delivering the language teaching are not actually trained language teachers, and they sometimes will hold a class for all the children in the school at the same time, which means you've got a mixture of different age groups, and it's just not been a good learning environment, and the older children have sort of lost patience with it. The other thing to consider is the number of Ukrainian children that we have in schools in Poland. So Hanna told me that in the cities, almost every class in a school has got Ukrainian children in it. And this is a good thing in the sense that it means that the children have got peers that they can rely on and who've got shared experience. But it can also mean that it's holding them back from learning Polish. And she said that teachers are observing the students in the playground. They tend to circulate with the Ukrainian children, and even after school, they're not engaging in activities with other Polish children. She then told me that in the villages, it can be different, where you might get a Ukrainian child in every fourth class in a Polish school. But in these situations, the child may become very attached to the intercultural assistant because they're the only person in the school who really understands them. Now, the other thing to consider is obviously that when the families have travelled from Ukraine to Poland, the majority of them will have left behind fathers, brothers, other relatives of fighting age who are not allowed to leave the country. And that's very hard for children to deal with, to be separated from a parent. For some of them, it will have been for more than 2 years now. And I know from conversations I've had with families in Poland and Romania and in Slovakia that some of them will cross those borders and go back and forth for visits. But when the child is nearing kind of ages 17 or 18, a son, the mother may feel very nervous about doing that because once the son is 18, he can be stopped at the border and told he's not allowed to leave the country again. So there are many, many cases of young boys or young men effectively kind of being shut out of the country. If they've decided that they don't want to be in the country and face the prospect of being called up later in life, they're choosing to study, they want to develop their future in a different way. They can't go back to Ukraine and visit their family. And Hanna also said that some boys that have left and come to Poland kind of get judged by peers who have stayed in Ukraine and have even been bullied about it. Got this guilt about not wanting to fight, but also you're torn because you can't go back to your country and see your family. Along with this issue of single parent households being headed up by mothers is the fact that these mothers are working and they have to earn money to support the family. And what Hanna told me is that some of the children now as well are also trying to support their families. So some of these older children dropping out of the secondary school are looking for cash in hand jobs to raise a bit of extra cash. So really this picture that Hanna and Anna painted is one where many children are doing fine, they're doing well, and the schools are doing the best that they can to support them. But simply because of language barriers and intercultural differences, some of these children's sort of hopes and ambitions, their future careers, are being held back really because they just can't get on in the same way in a foreign country. And I guess the final thing to mention is, of course, that although these children are in a different country, they're not entirely protected from the stress of the war. They're still connected to what's going on next door. They hear it through the news. They live through the pain of an attack, even if they're not physically present. And like all Ukrainians, they simply can't think about the future. They don't know when the war will end or what's going to happen next. So moving on, it is time to go to Szkoła, the school in Warsaw, and to speak to Alina Udowikova, who is the English teacher there. So Alina, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here. Mm-hmm.
So I understand it's the last week of term and you're all looking forward to the holidays. What's the feeling like at school?
Yes, it was like long and hard academic year because, like as you mentioned, we worked in two systems. It was a very innovative way, but yes, we are looking forward. Tomorrow is the last day.
And I understand that this two system thing that you just described, you've just won an award for that, haven't you, because of your approach? Could you tell us a bit more about that?
With English language, it is kind of easy because English language is just English language. But if we speak about biology or chemistry or other subjects, we have to mention that terminology in Polish and in Ukrainian could be different. What is more, the syllabus absolutely could be different because we go to school at our classes are just different a little bit. And that's why we have in our school binary lessons where two teachers are present, teacher of the subject and teacher of Polish, who just introduces different terms to students so that they could be familiar with these components. And if they want to stop going to Ukrainian school and move further to Polish school, they have already chance and they know some terms and they can just join into Polish system.
That's great. And could you also tell us a bit about how the school got set up? Because I understand this happened just after the full-scale invasion happened.
Yes, it just happened very fast, like in 24 days from the first initial thought up to the day when school opened its doors. Just on 11th of April, it all started. And actually, firstly, there were everybody, like all kids from all regions. But school has just joins a lot of popularity. And right now we have the priority. So in our school, we have children who are from either, occupied territories and they have no possibility to go back, or where school was destroyed somehow by bombing or shelling, and just it is impossible to go back. And that's the priority.
And you yourself, you also
yes. I'm from Kharkiv, and it is very, very close to border. It is like 40 kilometers, and unfortunately we have only one underground school which works offline. All other schools are online, but this we have problems with blackouts. The system, electricity system of Kharkiv is almost ruined, and we have supply from different regions. And as far as I know, like even right now, people cannot use normally electricity. So the quality of education, even in underground, even in the subway, also, I believe, is not very high. That's why I cannot go back right now because I'm not only a teacher, I'm a mother, and I have a child who also goes to my school here in Warsaw.
Yes, So I mean, you've been through a lot, and these children have also been through a lot, I understand. So how do you support these children when they arrive? How do you get them to settle in to the school and to feel comfortable?
We have a good team of teachers and also psychologists. We observe children. There are a lot of issues like team up work to understand their personal problems, individual and group. So it's like a combination of work. If teacher sees something, they address to psychologists. Psychologists also can work individually. And the same we can do with parents. If parents, like mostly we have here mothers and grannies, if they seek some kind of help, it is also possible to give some kind of emotional support. If not school, there are a lot of telephone numbers of free psychologists, probably in Ukrainian house and somewhere else, where they can get some kind of help online.
That's great. And how do you feel the children are in Poland? I mean, are they happy living in Poland? Are they learning good Polish, and do they have Polish friends?
It's hard to say, because I believe that a lot of children they miss their own families, their own friends, their own life, because we were deprived of it. It's like it was not our choice, we didn't have to choose. But right now, yes, you cannot distinguish them from usual teenagers. They have, they relax somehow. They are like similar kids, and yeah, for sure, they study Polish language. They have some Polish friends, but I'm sure that mostly they prefer to keep to Ukrainian community and continue being in this community.
Yeah. And do they feel welcomed by Polish people? Because I know, at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, there was a lot of really like warm welcome from Polish people. But more and more now you hear reports that this has kind of faded, and sometimes there are negative attitudes to Ukrainians living in Poland. How did the children experience that? Did they ever talk about that?
As you know, we don't maybe mostly communicate with Polish people, so it's hard for us to say. But yes, some kind of cases appear, but not. It's not so widespread. I couldn't say this widespread just because we are here in closed community, I could say.
How have the children changed since they arrived at school? I'm just thinking about what it felt like on the first day that you opened, and how they've adapted.
When school opened, we couldn't hear children speak. It was like very, very quiet, like silence and no noise, which is not very usual for kids. Usually when you are in school halls, you can see a lot of noise, a lot of sounds. Right now, for sure, school lives its life. We have a lot of activities, and children are absolutely different. Probably they have some kind of trauma, because we get the news every day from Ukraine and hourly from Ukraine, and it could somehow be vulnerable for them, but still in most cases they have changed psychologically and emotionally. They are more stable.
I see, yeah. And are there any other challenges that you have to deal with? Have any other kind of challenges come up over the past 2.5 years?
For sure, for kids, like studying languages, okay? As they were forced to study language, if they want to continue here, it's first of all speaking barrier. Secondly, integration in the Polish society. Yes, we have similar culture because it's our neighboring country, but still a little bit different. And for sure, like if we speak about younger children, okay, school is located in the city center, but people live all around. And if you are a working mother, you have to somehow to accompany your child to school and bring back. And it's actually like a lot of challenges for parents to arrange all of these issues.
Well, we're looking forward to hearing from the children themselves. So I wondered if all of the teenagers could go one by one and tell us their names and their ages.
Hello, my name is Dan. I'm 16 years old.
Good afternoon. My name is Dina. I'm 17 years old.
Hello, my name is Charlotte. I'm 16 years old.
Hi, I'm Bob, and I'm also 16 years old.
I don't know who wants to go first, but it'd be great if one of you could tell listeners what it's like to be studying at Scarborough, and how the school has helped you when you've had to move to Poland, and maybe also what is the best thing about the school.
So for me, the very first day of getting into this school in Warsaw was pretty amazing, because the first thing that I saw in the school that took me to it, that bent my life to it, I would say, is that we have so many different experiences from all around the Ukraine, because there are many teachers, many children from like every region of Ukraine, from many schools with different experiences, and we all are put together in this one educational process, which makes this school really amazing, I think.
Oh wow, that's so interesting. And were you with anyone that you knew when you went there, or were you on your own meeting new children?
I had some friends from the school already, because we had some kind of summer camp, and therefore I met my classmates during this summertime, and then when I came to school to study, I already knew some fellas.
Oh, that's great. And what about Gina? How did you feel about joining the school?
Actually, I came to this school on the first day it was opened. I was a bit scared because of a new experience, because of new people I will meet there. It was a terrible day, actually. And then after a few weeks, I met some friends. I was trying to get into some conversations, and my school experience became a bit better.
What about the teachers? How did they help you? Maybe Charlotte can tell us what was special about what the teachers did.
They help us a lot. I'm not in the school for too long. I'm here for only 1 semester, but they help us a lot. They help us to integrate not only with my classmates, but also with Polish students, because we have integration program where we could spend time with our Polish colleagues from other school, and it's really amazing how they really wanted to help you. They will teach you like how many times you needed to understand the topic. They always there not only as your teacher but also as your mentor, as your friends. That always can help you in different situation, in variety, so you can come up to them and not only ask about some problems with your like learning if you don't understand the topic, but also if you have some problem and you don't know whom to talk with, you can talk with your teacher. And it's so amazing. It's so like you feel united. You feel like you can tell whatever you need and they will hear you. So it's amazing.
Oh, that's really interesting, because we heard that in some Polish schools, even Ukrainian children are not socializing a lot with Polish children. And so, Bob, have you got some Polish friends, and do you sort of socialize in the Polish community?
Yeah, actually, I used to study at a Polish high school, and it was mentally challenging for me because I couldn't find some common hobbies or what to talk about. I think it has to do with my character more, but it's easier here to make friends than in a Polish school.
So, Dan, what do you like about living in Poland? What are the positives about being there?
Every single Polish person that I have met here in Warsaw was really understanding and willing to help if I had some problems. For example, if I needed just to get to some other part of the town that I didn't know, they were here to help me. So there is no problem to ask people for something, ask for support if you need it. And also, we have like Ukrainians and people in Poland, we have a similar mentality. I think it is because like we are all from the Slavic culture, and this is really helps me to integrate to this system, to life in Poland, and this what makes my life here amazing, because I understand people even if I'm from different country.
And Charlotte, what about outside of school? Have you been able to carry on any of your interests or hobbies in Warsaw that you used to do in Ukraine? I hear that some of you are good dancers or musicians.
Yes, I was lucky enough. I played billiard before in Ukraine, and here I was able to pursue my passion and to continue doing it, even participating in some tournaments. It was really amazing experience to see how different our play, our some kind of like community different in different countries, and also pick up new hobbies thanks from my school and thanks from my surroundings, and I'm really glad.
And what about what's going to happen next then? So you all sound like you're very happy in Szkoła, but you will graduate soon. So what do you think you'd like to do when you finish school? Do you have any idea?
I know that I want to help Ukraine in future, to build it, to just help it in different ways, actually. So right now I'm going to study a lot, and then I'm going to be a specialist and came to the Ukraine.
Thank you. And Bob, how about you?
Well, I plan to study in Poland, but you never know how things will turn out. That's what I've learned. Yeah, maybe I'll come back to Ukraine if there is a possibility, but in a bigger city.
Oh, thank you. It's really interesting. It sounds like you've all learned so much and changed so much since you came to Poland. And it's really nice to hear that you have enjoyed meeting people from different parts of your own country as well. Alina, I wondered if you wanted to give us a kind of final thought.
For sure. I would like to tell you that, like, some kind of message, okay, that the war is still on, that there are a lot of territories which are being under shelling every day and under bombing. It's like my city. Daily it is being under bombs and shellings. So we have a lot of refugees here. And, like our school started recruitment for the next year. And within the 2 weeks, I think, we have the number of kids which is equal to the number of kids of our school right now. But what we observed that the funding and financial support is decreasing. And for sure, we would like to ask people not to stop it, because for sure we can integrate completely, but we don't want to lose our identity as a country, as a community, because we believe that we deserve the better future.
Coming up, we hear Dom and Roland's final thoughts. Well, thank you so much to all of you who joined us from Warsaw, and thank you very much, Gabby, for organising all of this. It's been really wonderful to hear. Let's come back to London then and go to our final thoughts in this studio. Roland or Dom? I don't know if Roland is still there, but Roland or Dom, would you like to go first?
On the battlefield, I raised my eyebrows when Dom was mentioning on the battlefield updates that things have heated up near Tourette's again, just because I kind of know that part of Donbass. That's a bit of the front line, the old front line that's still there. It's the last real fragment near Tourette's of the old kind of 2014 to 2022 front line. Things have been quite static there. I'm quite curious to kind of hear that, and that piques my interest, and I'll be having a look. I don't know whether it signifies anything larger or more significant, but grabs my eye. Okay, a philosophical note on what I was saying earlier about Vietnam. On our sister podcast, Battle Lines, if I may plug it, I was speaking to the US broadcaster Fareed Zakaria, and he's got this idea that we're all living in an era of revolution. And without boring you too much, part of that is about how the centuries-long dominance, basically, of the West is at an end, right? We can see it, and part of that is not because, America's got weaker or something, but because of something he calls the rise of the rest. And I think the role of Vietnam, we were discussing just there, is very much part of that. Right? It's, yes, okay, in the Cold War it was a communist satellite country, so on. Today, Vietnam, Indonesia, Turkey, all the many, many other countries are developing rapidly. They now have much more economic clout than they had before, and that's why you're going to see people like Vladimir Putin, people like Xi Jinping and Joe Biden all wooing them. And of course, we all know that the Russians have their eye on that part of the world in the hope that while the old West supports Ukraine, this larger emerging segment of the world has different views. It's tangential to the war itself, but I think it's really, really important, actually, if we're talking about the kind of eventual outcome and what the world is going to look like after the conflict. I will pass on to Dom.
Thanks, Roland. So my final thought, two, if I may. Firstly, a quickie. What amazing young people we just spoke to. So thank you for dialing in today. Incredible to hear such positivity from them. Secondly, I note, so Putin's visit to North Korea, signing of a mutual defence pact. It's already having an effect, I think, but not in the way the Kremlin expected, because a presidential official in South Korea has today said the country will reconsider a long-standing policy that bars it from supplying arms directly to Ukraine, as they've expressed grave concern over this agreement between Putin and Kim. Jimmy Rushton, we had on yesterday, security analysis based in Kyiv. He said that Putin's open embrace of North Korea might actually have a very big downside. Noting today's announcement from South Korea, because South Korea is one of the largest arms manufacturers in the world. It's just supplied, I think, 900 tanks, is it, to Poland? Very capable tanks. So, be careful what you're doing there, Putin. I don't have a huge problem, okay, with Putin going around and visiting these places. It would be nice if North Korea or Vietnam upheld the ICC's indictment of Putin, but that's not really going to happen. But I don't have a huge problem because the more he visits other countries, getting their direct or indirect support for the war, the more he draws the sting from his own argument that other countries shouldn't get involved. So, if he and North Korea are openly signing a defence pact, and North Korea is going to be supplying weapons for his war in Ukraine, then why can't other countries do the same for Ukraine? So the more he goes around all these places and trumpets all this great sort of grandstanding, particularly through the lens of Ukraine and occasionally with the direct supply of weapons, absolutely fine. Well, then that leaves the door open for everyone else and the same argument to do the same for Ukraine. So well done, Mr. Putin. Another brilliant geostrategic decision there.
Ukraine the Latest is an original podcast from The Telegraph. To stay on top of all of our Ukraine news, analysis and dispatches from the ground, subscribe to The Telegraph. You can get your first 3 months for just £1 at www.telegraph.co.uk/Ukraine the Latest. Or sign up to Dispatches, our Ukraine newsletter, which brings stories from our award-winning foreign correspondents straight to your inbox. We also have a Ukraine live blog on our website where you can follow updates as they come in throughout the day, including insights from regular contributors to this podcast. You can listen to this conversation live at 1 p.m. each weekday on Twitter Spaces. Follow The Telegraph on Twitter so you don't miss it. To our listeners on YouTube, please note that due to issues beyond our control, there is sometimes a delay between broadcast and upload. So if you want to hear Ukraine the Latest as soon as it is released, do refer to podcast apps. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider following Ukraine the Latest on your preferred podcast app. And if you have a moment, leave a review, as it helps others find the show. You can also get in touch directly to ask questions or give comments by emailing ukrainepod@telegraph.co.uk. We do read every message. And you can contact us directly on Twitter. You can find our Twitter handles in the description for this episode. Ukraine the Latest is produced by Louisa Wells and Giles Gear.